Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 6 of Finlandia University's Philosophy 212 Ethics. I am Dr. Patricia Gross, and I am your professor today. This week, we'll be discussing a non consequentialist ethical system, and that is Kant's duty ethics, aka deontology. Let's begin. First, as usual, here are your assignments for this week. You have this reading, and you'll be attending a Zoom class on Tuesday, and on Thursday, you're listening to this lecture. You have another video to watch, you have your discussion boards, and you have to take reading quiz 3 that's specifically just on Kant. Who is this Kant guy, you ask me? Here's some information from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Born in Königsberg, Prussia, and he never traveled more than 10 miles from there. He was born to pietist parents. He was an Enlightenment philosopher. His major works include The Critique of Pure Reason, Critique of Judgment, and Critique of Practical Reason, the groundworks for metaphysics of morals. It's this last one we're up to. The groundwork of the metaphysics of morals, translated in multiple ways. The reading you had was the reading that you had for this week. Kant's ethical system, duty ethics, is a very popular one amongst moral philosophers. You may know the show The Good Place and the joke, this is why nobody likes moral philosophers. Okay, let's get into it. Kant doesn't start with desire or happiness as the be-all and end-all of human life. He actually thinks that's silly, right? Instead, he begins with the good will. This slide delves into what it is, and thanks to Sarah Vitale at Ball State for the use of some of her slides. So what is the good will? Only a thing that is good without limitation or good in itself. The good will is the only thing that is good without limitation and that is good in itself. Unlike talents of the mind or gifts of fortune or happiness that are good because they give you other things. If you are very good at languages, that will help you in communicating with people. If you have lots of money, then that'll just help you in your life. If you have happiness, that'll help you do other things as well, right? The good will is the only thing that is good without limitation and is good in itself, right? It's not good for any of its effects. It's kind of like an internal moral compass. And we have this because we are rational agents. We have thinking parts. We have the capacity to act rightly, to be moral, because we have rationality. And that's why we are able to have a good will. Kant says famously that two things fill me with awe: the starry sky above and the moral law within. And that's related to our being as humans. So what's so special as humans? What's so special about humans? For Kant, it is that we have reason. It makes us distinct from the animals, etc. For Mill, human reason plays a huge part in his ethical system. How do we know whether specific action is right or wrong? Through reason, of course. However, reason for Kant is not linked to happiness. Let's read this slide. Why do we have reason? Is it to be happy? No, our instincts are better than our reason is. The purpose of our reason is to produce our goodwill. By that is our instincts are better at making us happy. Sex and love and rock and roll, baby. Those are based on our instincts, not our reason. The purpose of reason is to produce the goodwill. How do we use our reason to produce a goodwill? Well, it's through acting on duty, which he starts talking about on page 397. How do we act according to a goodwill? We act according to duty, right? Duty to what? Well, the moral law, which is not the same as duty to one's country, one's family, one's workplace, or anything like that. Rather, it's the law we follow insofar as we're rational agents. Duty is the necessity of an action from respect for law. It means we have to do it because it's the right thing to do. It is not the same thing as obeying an inclination or weighing the consequences. That is, doing the things as we want to do it, or thinking about the consequences of our actions, like Mill would say. Kant writes, now an action from duty must altogether exclude the influence of inclination, and therewith every object of the will. Hence there is nothing left which can determine the will, except objectively the law, and subjectively pure respect for the practical law, i.e., the will can be subjectively determined by the maxim which I should follow such a law, even if all my inclinations are thereby thwarted. The maxim is the reasoning, right? And so basically it's saying that the goodwill tells us that we should follow the law, right? And it involves respect for the law, the moral law, right? Regardless of what it does to us. We know that sometimes we have to do things because we have to do them, not because we want to do them or because they'll be good for us. He says only then does an action have moral worth. If for you to do something that has moral worth or moral value, it has to come from your goodwill alone and not from any other inclination. So, what is the relationship between actions and duty? Here are 4 cases Kant discusses. Actions contrary to duty, actions which accord with duty and the actor has no immediate inclination, but he or she is impelled by some other inclination, actions which accord with duty and the subject has in addition an immediate inclination, and actions which accord with duty but are contrary to some immediate inclination. So, there are some actions that you do that are contrary to duty. For example, if your grandfather is sick and you need to take him to the hospital and you instead take him to an amusement park, that is contrary to duty, right? Because we could probably agree there's probably a duty that you have to take grandpa to the hospital, right? Actions which accord with duty and the actor has no immediate inclination, but he or she is impelled by some other inclination. So, for example, you take grandpa to the hospital because your mom says she'll give you $5, right? That means, so you didn't want to do it and you only did it because your mom was giving you money? You didn't do it out of duty. You just did it. You did the right thing for the wrong reason. Then we have actions which accord with duty and the subject has in addition an immediate inclination, right? This one's a little bit trickier, right? So there's sometimes we do the right thing because we want to do the right thing, right? Grandpa is sick. I'm going to take him to the hospital, but I want to take him to the hospital because I love him, right? So you're acting according to duty, but also according to your desire to help grandpa. Now, action number 4, actions which accord with duty but are contrary to some immediate inclination. That's where the money shot is, right? Because on this one, we actually have this idea of so say you have grandpa and you hate him because he's a jerk and you don't want to take him to the hospital. You've got other stuff to do, but you take him to the hospital because it's the right thing to do, despite the fact that you don't want to do it. That's the action you did according to duty. So if you'd like a small bonus, feel free to take these cases that are on this slide and write to me by Friday at 11:59 p.m. which of the 4 cases from the previous slide they fall under, right? So in this example, here's a series of examples that Kant gives some of them, right? And the question is, who is acting from duty, or who is acting from some kind of mixed inclination, or who is going completely contrary to duty? So that's a bonus assignment for you. So Kant gives 3 propositions to sum up his argument so far. 1, an action must be from duty to be moral. 2, an action done from duty has its moral worth not in the purpose that is to be attained by it, but in the maxim according to which the action is determined. That is, when you look at an action that is done from duty, right? And I'm taking grandpa to the hospital because it's the right thing to do. Its moral worth isn't in the purpose that is attained by it. So it's not in making grandpa happy and healthy, right? It's not in the consequences, right? It's in the maxim according to which the action is determined. I take grandpa to the hospital because it's the right thing to do, because I have a duty to help both everyone and also specifically my grandfather because he's sick and he's my responsibility. That is my maxim. A maxim is your reasoning behind doing something, right? So your reasoning behind it cannot be for any other consequence than just doing the duty. And number 3, the third proposition, duty is the necessity of an action done out of respect for the law. What is the law we have a duty to? How do we know what we have a duty to? Through the categorical imperative, of course. Let's check out this slide. So, everything obeys laws in nature. Rational beings are the only ones who can understand the law or represent the law to themselves. So what does this mean? My cats fight with each other and play with each other, and they also eat and poop and things like that. They obey the laws of being cats, right? But they don't understand any of it, right? I do. So, because I'm a rational being. And so this is what Kant means by having a will. We're rational beings who can understand the law. And the law that we give ourselves, according to Kant, is called the categorical imperative. By categorical, it means that it's unconditional. It always applies. It's not hypothetical. And it's an imperative because it is a command of our reason. Obeying it is the duty. What does obeying it mean? Well, it doesn't say anything about any particular object or action. It just tells us how to exercise our will. So the first formulation of this categorical imperative we get is I should never act except in such a way that I can also will that my maxim should become a universal law. Again, the categorical imperative, here it is. Act only according to that maxim, that is your reasoning, by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. What does this mean? Maxim. O'Neill's definition is a personal policy, the principle underlying the particular intention or decision on which he or she acts. What is a principle of volition? It's the same thing as the maxim. Again, the maxim is your policy, the principle underlying the particular intention or decision on which he or she acts. So if I decide to cheat on the ethics exam, right, the maxim is not the deciding to cheat, right? It's the principle underlying that intention, right? So it's okay to cheat on the ethics exam, excuse me, in my particular circumstance, right? That would be a maxim. 1 second, I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, and we just talked about categorical means unconditional, always applies. Imperative means it's a command of our reason. We have to do it. Obeying it is a duty. And so this slide will help you figure out if your maxim, that is the reasoning behind your moral action, follows the categorical imperative. So number 1, what is my maximum? What's the reasoning behind what I'm doing here? 2, make it a universal law. Is it thinkable without contradiction? What does this mean? If not, following it breaks a perfect duty. If everyone cheated on their ethics exams, we'd be in a bad place. If everyone thought it'd be okay to cheat at any given time, for any given reason, then I wouldn't want to live in that world. I wouldn't want my doctor cheating me like when he's supposed to be giving me a surgery, right? Okay, so let's keep going. If I can think it, and if I can think about this becoming, my maxim becoming universal law, we got to go to number 3. Would we want it to be a universal law? Would I, as a rational being, desire it to be brought into effect as a natural law? If not, following breaks an imperfect duty. And if I can think it and will it, then doing it has moral worth. One of the primary duties is to never treat a human being as a means rather than an end. What does that mean? When I ask my friend Emily to give me a ride to work, in some ways I'm using her. However, Emily is not just a car for me. We spend time with each other, engage intellectually with each other, and support each other. We both respect each other as our own persons, right? So I don't know why I put that comment on this particular slide, but I'm going to keep going, and I'm not going to go over this particular slide. So you're going to be able to learn more about what that means in these other slides. We're not actually going over these other slides in this class. I just wanted to have them here because it's helpful. And this is the slide that I thought is meaningful. For Kant, human beings are persons, they're ends in themselves, and should never be used for someone else's gain. Kant's morality is based on reason. It is our rationality that makes us worthy of moral consideration. He says, so act as to treat humanity, whether in thine own person or in that of any other, in every case as an end withal, never as means only. This means that we should always treat people as ends in themselves and never as a means to some other end, right? Okay, that was a lot. I'm thirsty. I need to stop talking. So here's your discussion board assignment for this week. Let me just click on it right quick. Oh, I thought I had it up here, but it's not. So week 6 discussion board is here. And for your discussion board this week, here it is. Manuel Kant's duty ethics is very complicated and difficult to grasp. However, there are 2 basic fundamental facts of this theory. 1, we should act according to the categorical imperative, which states that we should act only according to that maxim by which you could at the same time will that it should become a universal law. And you will accordingly have 2 sections of this discussion board to complete. 1, look at the examples Kant gives on 217 to 219, and they're listed, I think, on page 23 of the slides, but I've added more slides, but I think they are right here. 32, actually. I'm gonna change this while we talk. It's on page 32 of the slides. Look at the examples that he gives on page 32 of the slides. You can see how I messed that up. Choose one of the examples and explain it in your own words. What is the example? What is Kant saying here? How does it connect to his view of mortality? Or morality, not mortality. Well, morality and mortality are linked, I guess. And 2, for Kant, human beings are persons. They are ends in themselves, like I just said. and should never be used for someone else's gains. He writes, "So act is to treat humanity, whether in thine own person or in that of any other, in every case as an end withal, never as a means only. This means that we should always treat people as ends in themselves and never as a means to some other end. Write an example of a time you were used as a mean, or perhaps a time that you used someone else as a means, rather than an end, and how did that make you feel?" This original post is due by 11:59 p.m. on Thursday, and you must respond to at least 3 of your classmates' posts by Friday at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so I'm out of breath from talking so much. So I think that's it for week 6. I'll see you guys in class. Goodbye.